Hi, Peter Charles here, Hooked for Life Fly Fishing. And today we're going to do a fly that's quite simple and it has a very generic name, Black Bear Brown Hackle. It's by George Routledge of the Miramichi of George's Fly Shop. And so it's a pretty simple pattern that's tied in smaller sizes, 6 to 10 thereabouts. I'm going to tie it in a size 4 because I've got more steelhead in mind. But this thing should be a great fly for steelhead when you're fishing over pressured fish that have seen all the bright gaudy stuff. So put something bland, dark in front of them, and that's usually a ticket for a hit. So let's take a look at the materials and get started. Okay, before we get looking at the material for this particular fly, I'd like to draw your attention to two problems that I had with it, and I decided to leave those problems in place rather than reshoot the video, because there's an opportunity to learn something from it. The first problem was my hackle was just too big. My bag of brown saddle hackle was too picked over, and all the smaller feathers were gone. So that's not a deal breaker. It probably actually will fish just fine with the longer hackle. It just doesn't look like the original. But the second problem occurred because I'm used to winding 4 or 5 turns of hackle on a fly, so I left enough space in the body and between the body and the eye of the hook to wind 4 or 5 turns of hackle. But this particular pattern only calls for 2 turns. And as a consequence, I ended up with a long head that, wasn't necessary. So I thought, you know what, that's a problem that a lot of us will make when we're used to doing 4 or 5 turns of hackle, and we're doing a fly like this that only requires 1 or 2 turns of hackle to, get the desired result. So I left it as is, and we could just use that as an opportunity to remind ourselves that if we're not putting on much hackle, bring that body closer to the eye of the hook. My hook is this heavy traditional wet fly hook, and this is size 4. My thread is this A-dot Vivus. I'm using this Uni French oval in small, in a silver. The body is going to be uni yarn in black wool. We're going to be using, oh, here we go, Black Bear. For the hair, you could use other hairs as well. You don't have to use bear. And we're just going to use a simple brown hackle for the hackling. As we said, this is Black Bear Brown Hackle. Tells you exactly what it's made of. So let's get started. Bring it back just to the hook point, and then we're going to tie in our tip from there. Get your thread out of the way. This is just a small tip. There we go. Now we're just going to tie in the rib. You could have folded the tip back if you wanted. I'm just doing it separately, but you could put it all one piece if you wanted. Now for our black wool. Bring your thread forward. Okay, as I say, 3 passes, so we're going to come forward. And then when we get to the back, we're just going to bring it over, get right to that tip. So we just get a little bit of silver showing and come forward and tie off. Now we're going to put in the rib. And you can see why we use the small here, because if we were to use a medium or large, it would get a little bit overwhelming. So turn at the back, then come forward. You want your rib in proportion to the size of the fly. And you can fold it under, trap it. That helps to improve the durability so your rib doesn't pull out. Now for your black bear. Black bear comes in short, medium, and long hairs. This is kind of a medium. You have to be careful you don't get too much. Get rid of the strays. And this is not going to be a big wing. Get rid of any of the longer hairs so they line up. This is not going to be a bulky wing. Okay. Now for the hackle. Now, I'm not using much hackle here. This pattern just calls for a fairly sparse hackle. So I'm just using a little bit here. I'm just going to trim it off and cut in a tying in point. There we go. And you want this hackle to point backwards. So we want to, you can start by seeing if it will fold over. Some will, some are a little tougher to make fold over. So if you get some barbs pointing forward, just push them back. There we go. That's all we need for now make sure everything is staying put. Put a few loose few loose wraps at the back, I should say. And then we'll whip finish. And we'll just put some head cement on this. Okay, there's our black bear brown hackle. I'm going to say that slowly so I don't screw it up. And as I say, I did it in a steelhead size. You could do it a little smaller. You could, in a very small size, this would be a great wet fly for trout. You might even get a smallmouth on it. So give it a try, the black bear brown hackle. Cheers.